Hi, I'm too short. Okay, it's a problem. Do we have an Apple crate somewhere? Hi, my name is Siok. I'm from Singapore, and I'm very short. That's a tough talk to follow, and it's also hard to speak late in the afternoon when everyone is kind of sleepy and jet-lagged. So I'm happy to tell you that I'm here not to ply you with more insights, but to rather supply some entertainment. Because I'm a filmmaker, I'm a TV producer, you don't have to worry, I'm not going to break out in song or a pole dance or anything like that, although I'm very talented at that. It's my hidden talent. I'm just going to play you a teaser from my film, which is about Twitter. Okay, hang on.
Everybody has haters. Yeah, once the government got on Twitter, I don't want to be involved with it.
Oh, good. Let him hate it. Let him hate it. Send those haters. Let him go get a hug.
Be careful what you say on Twitter, baby. Trust me when I say that.
Twitter's like my boyfriend. I'm telling you, I have a Twitter crush on Twitter. I know. It's creepy.
I heard Twitter was a stupid place that people just talked about what they wanted to have for lunch, and I said, well, that's where I belong.
Some people Twitter like if they're having breakfast that day, you know, that's not really.
Can Twitter do anything? Can Twitter wipe my ass? No. But people can.
I'm sure you've all heard of that very famous proverb. The road to hell is paved with cool ideas. About 2 years ago, I thought I had a cool idea, which was really to make a film about Twitter by leveraging the power of Twitter, inviting Twitter users to take part in the process. Of course, that really got me into trouble. You know that all great stories is about how someone, the protagonist, gets him or herself into a hole and then try to get out of it. So I have been spending the past 2 years trying to get myself out of that hole, which is to try to finish that film, where the context is this. I'm actually a TV producer. I barely knew anything about internet or blogging up till about 3.5 years ago. So when I announced to the world through Twitter and on a website that I'm going to crowdsource Twitter stories, I actually didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't know how hard it was. But I think what I intuitively felt was really that a film about Twitter will only be successful if it resonates with the culture on Twitter. That means it's not good enough to make a good film, like a good conventional film. You have to make it in a way that people, the community on Twitter actually resonates with it. So that's why I threw myself into crowdsourcing, although I've never done it. I wasn't sure if anyone will respond. But we've been at it for 2 years, and the whole process has really been that in terms of filmmaking, you always start with the development process, which means you develop your stories. And for us, the development process is actually open source. That means that we launch a website and people actually submitted stories or tweeted stories. So everyone can see it, which means that you can actually take the same stories and make another film yourself if you wanted to. So there was no secrecy. Everyone knew what story ideas were out there. And then I got an invitation from a crazy artist, a talented and crazy artist in New York, to basically go to New York and go across the country with him on a road trip. But he didn't tell me a very crucial fact, which was really that I have to go on a bus We went on a Greyhound bus, and if any of you had been to the US, you probably know that that's like probably the worst possible way to travel, because they basically don't treat you as humans. You know, you're kind of like cattle being on the bus. But we went on the road trip, and the interesting thing about the road trip, which is really unconventional, is really that we didn't follow our research. We actually tweeted the whole trip. We were sending out tweets, we were asking people to give us leads to events and people we should interview. When we got stranded, we also tweeted, and actually someone came to fetch us from the bus station. So we actually solved all our logistical and creative problems using Twitter. That was a road trip across America. And then in terms of editing, in the post-production, we basically did what we call beta screenings. It's like we did 15 beta screenings in 15 months around the world, in Asia, Europe, and the US. And the screenings were all organized by communities, Twitter users who've heard about the film, want to help the film. So it's very grassroots and driven. But of course, it's a nightmare for a filmmaker because you keep showing a film that is not finished and is imperfect, and you are exposing the bugs of the film to people. But I think the principle was really to mirror and resonate with the open culture on Twitter. But I gave myself a way out by calling it not just a film, but a film and a social media experiment, because my logic was that maybe if we, how do I put it? Even if it's a terrible film, I can always say, but it was a great social media experiment. You know, the film was not that good, but the social media experiment was very, very good. You know, it worked really well. So why did I want to put myself through all this trouble? I think I just felt that it was a very, very, very difficult film to make. Because what happens on Twitter is actually quite abstract. And have you not noticed that when people who are really into Twitter and they try to tell someone who's not on Twitter, it's almost impossible to convey the experience, because it's a very immersive experience, and it's actually even harder to make a film about Twitter, to actually convey it on film in a way that's not boring, because people expect it to be full of screenshots of computer, you know, and people talking about Twitter and things like that. I like to think that the film is a lot more interesting than that, a lot more entertaining than that. And what I really wanted to figure out is actually what I call the sociology of Twitter. I wanted to know how and if Twitter has redistributed resources and power, you know, within society, whether someone can actually go from being disempowered to becoming empowered. I wanted to know how identity has been reshaped and how community has been redefined. So I'm going to show you a clip from the film right now. It's actually a kind of a Twitter revolution story, but it's an unexpected story. The context for that is that, how many of you remember this woman called Neda Sultani from the Iran Revolution? She's someone who was shot point blank on the streets of Iran, and her companion filmed the video, uploaded it onto the internet, and it went viral, and she became the symbol of the revolution. So this is a story about Neda, but not the Neda that died in the video, but rather another Iranian woman who was mistaken for her, because she has a very similar name. She's also called Neda. So I just show you a 2-minute clip, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I learned from the making of the film. Okay.
Wild thing.
My encounter with Yanis left me with more questions than answers. If Twitter helps spread information, will it not also spread misinformation just as quickly?
Twitter is an incredibly powerful tool that's revolutionizing the world, but in my heart of hearts, after my experience, it scares me to death.
Dr. Amy Beam is the only person I know who tweets using a pseudonym. She's an IT specialist who spends part of her time in Turkey. Her interest in the Middle East led her to Twitter during Iran elections.
BBC and CNN were saying what was happening in Iran was a Twitter revolution. Tweets were pouring in at over 300 new tweets per minute.
Then Amy saw a tweet linking to this YouTube video. This image of young Neda shot to death became the iconic image of the revolution. Amy tried to find out who the real Neda is by searching on Facebook. One woman, an English professor in Tehran, responded to her.
Neda Sultani wrote back to me a few hours later saying, "No, it wasn't me. I thank you for your concern and pray for my people." At that point, the living Neda Sultani and I became Facebook friends.
This is Neda, the woman who died. This is also Neda, but she's the living woman. The unthinkable happened. Someone copied the Facebook picture of the living Neda onto the web.
And people kept tweeting websites, 1 to 5 to 10 to 100 to 10,000. Within minutes, her photo was appearing everywhere on the internet.
And major media outlets all started carrying it.
Every time I would notify a website that they had the wrong photo, 6 more websites had the photo. By morning, I had to email her and say, "Neda, it's too late. I can't put this fire out."
Soon, the living Neda was hounded by the Iranian government and accused of conspiracy. Fearing for her life, Neda fled Iran. She now lives in exile in Germany.
The power of misinformation and the speed of transmitting it to make something that's false into a so-called true story is terribly frightening to me.
I'm fascinated by the story, and I picked that story out of many possible Twitter revolution story. And I think it's because it's a very fascinating study of identity. You know, we are all identified by our avatars, and that's how we identify on the internet. But we seldom stop to think about how misleading that can be, how incomplete a representation it is. And I think for me that's quite a fascinating thing, because in terms of, I want to show you a series of photos that we had in the film. In the film, we used the avatar frame pictures a lot. So this is from a New York Twitter meetup. So almost everyone that we film, we actually film them with a picture frame. So, for example, and I think the reason we did that is really because the whole idea that the avatar, you are framing yourself to the world, you're presenting yourself to the world. But more than that, Twitter also, or social media also frames your worldview. That means your Twitter stream actually frames what you think about the world on a day-to-day, very granular basis. And I always joke about this, have you noticed how many people don't look like the avatars? Very few people I know look exactly like the avatar. I look nothing like my avatar, mostly because I have many things to hide and I'm constantly being hounded by the authorities. I'm just kidding. I think most people have a kind of pretty Photoshop representation of their professional self. And yet we take the avatar as a guide for who the person is. So I find that to be quite fascinating. I remember one story when I was, my last film was about the Beijing Olympics, and I had just gotten onto Facebook and Twitter, and we did a premiere in Beijing at a kind of a nice venue, raising money for charity. And there were some people who came, some of my friends came to the event, and their first question was, "Can I buy a ticket? I'm Siok's friend." And then they buy a ticket, they go through the door, and their next question is, "Who is Siok? What does she look like?" And the reason is because they only know me on social media. They only know me on Facebook and Twitter. And the problem is I don't look like my avatar. So in that setting, they got a little confused as to, how do they correlate the 2x4 or 4x whatever photograph with my real person. So I'm fascinated by that. I think I'm also fascinated by how identity is related to that sense of community. I think this whole day we've been talking about community empowerment, and I think what I discovered in the process of making the film is really that your identity, more and more identity is actually being shaped by our real-time connections. It's not just where you're from, the neighborhood you grew up with, but who you are connected with real time. And I want to show you a story from the film that illustrates that. The interesting thing about crowdsourcing is really that stories come out of the left field, like stories I didn't expect to actually include in the film end up being in the film. So I think that's actually quite fascinating for me. And here's a story about a homeless woman. The story came to us when we were going into Chicago, and someone who saw our tweets and actually proposed that we interview her.
It is what it is. It ain't what it ain't.
We invited Anne-Marie to join us on a road trip to Los Angeles. She will be speaking at the 140 conference.
Go to the conference and share my story with everyone. I want people to see, the real world of homelessness.
Hello there, Twitterverse. Where are you going?
Getting to know Anne-Marie made me think more deeply about how our real-time connections shape our identity. Is being homeless, period, any different from being homeless but connected to 1,000 people on Twitter? I can't help but wonder.
What happened was we got the lead through Twitter. Someone recommended that we interviewed her. And then we brought her on the road trip with us on the Greyhound bus, which I wasn't sure whether it was a reward or punishment because it was such a grueling trip. And she spoke at the Twitter conference. And that really sort of changed her life, turned her life around. I was very moved because I remember after speaking at the conference, she changed her Twitter bio to include the fact that she spoke at the conference and she's in this film. And it's quite hard to imagine. I mean, many of us speak all the time at different conferences and we would very seldom put it into our bio. But I think for her, I think Twitter is really a means of reshaping her identity. She may be in a very difficult situation. She's still homeless. She was homeless for a year after speaking at the conference. But she's connected in real time to a community that as day goes by, she kind of connects with them and reshape, and she's sharing her story with them, whether it's pain or discouragement or moments of happiness. So I think that for me is a very interesting story about identity, about crowdsourcing stories. I think there are several things that I learned from making this film. One is really that crowdsourcing is really quite hard and unpredictable. I think we now have this mythology that, if you need to do something quickly, just crowdsource it. But it's actually quite hard to mobilize people and get people excited when there's so much noise, when everyone else is also trying to sell something on the internet. It's very hard and unpredictable, and to sustain it as we have done for 2 years is quite improbable, and we're still at it. The other thing that I learned, which I feel is the inspiring part of it, is really at its best, crowdsourcing is really like a real-time jazz ensemble. I mean, different people have come along the way to really make the film better. They contribute their talents, they look at it from their point of view, and they actually improvise with me, in terms of how to make the film, how to screen the film, how to develop the website. So I think it's the opportunity and the risk that we all have in terms of actually reinventing ourselves, shaping our identity, connecting to evolving and changing set of communities, but at the same time helping others to do so through storytelling and social media. So that's my presentation. Thanks.